This is the ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour. Kane, Pittman and Olgun Knowledge back with you again, and perhaps not with the result that's going to please a lot of our listeners or viewers today, Olgs. We've just witnessed the Opals go down to Nigeria 75-62 in what was really a remarkable game for a variety of reasons that we're going to break down here, but nonetheless, a highly disappointing result for the Opals, the team that look, there's high expectations they're going to be able to go on and win a medal. And Olgs, at the back end of this, of course, we're going to have a quick chat about the Boomers and Canada as well. I just raced from the arena to Boomers practice, was able to catch up with Josh Green. Certainly their spirit's a little bit higher than probably where the Opals are at right now.
The difference between our post Opals experience is very funny. You raced to do a post game thing, then you went to Boomers practice, and then you rushed home. I turned on the skateboarding, and I was just watching kids just stack it for like half an hour, which is really fun because they're in the tricks portion. But man, where do we start with that Opals game? It was unbelievably poor. That the first half, I was hopeful for the Opals that it would just be a one-off, right? This Nigeria team came out firing, but Nigeria just kept their foot on the pedal. They kept the pressure up, and the Opals just had no response. And this very much looked like a team that went through their entire preparation process without their head coach there and without the bulk of their primary players there. It looked like they didn't have any counters, any adjustments to what Nigeria was bringing. And this I don't know if this might be an irredeemable loss for the Opals.
Yeah, I think the mental aspect of this is going to be very interesting to monitor with Canada and France coming up, two teams that are highly rated in the women's game for sure. But I find it so fascinating because we watched the start of this game. On the first possession, really good defense at the rim. Ezzy McBegor is right there. They're able to go down the other end of the floor in transition. Alana Smith scores. The next possession, Jade Melbournes strips her opponent. That resulting possession ends in pick and roll, Ezzy, open layup. Jade Melbournes started this game on fire. The Opals led 13-5. And you're like, all right, this is kind of what I expected. Now, I didn't think that this was going to be a walkover game. Nigeria, clearly a talented team, and they have the athleticism. But the way that it started, you're like, okay, they've really settled into this. And then the wheels fell off. And when I say the wheels fell off, they fell off quickly. The turnovers in this game, 26 overall, but they had 14 in the first 14 minutes of this game. I could say that I've never seen this before, but the best way I can put this, Olgs, is I asked Lauren Jackson, I said, you've been around this game forever. You're a Hall of Famer. You've seen everything there is to see. And when I finished that sentence, she cut me off and said, no, I've never seen that. I've never seen that. And she it was a fake laugh, but it was just like a shake of the head. I can't believe what I just witnessed. This Opals team could not get the ball beyond half court. And when they did get the ball beyond half court, they were scrambling and there was no semblance of a half court offense. It was remarkable.
It was incredible watching the inability of any Opals guard to get it over. And then the thing that summed it up was the end of the second quarter, where Nigeria got another steal and bucket, and then Kayla George very sort of loosely just inbounded the ball, sort of lobbed it in. It was another steal, and that wasn't another Nigeria bucket, but it very well could have been. Obviously, there are now huge question marks on this Opals team, and especially the guard play, right? And that's what is, I think, especially frustrating, because the reason why I think Ezzy McBegor, for example, wasn't able to really get going was because the guards just weren't able to initiate anything, right? Alana Smith sort of found her rhythm. She did her stuff just because she's more perimeter based, but the Opals just had an inability to get the ball inside the paint, and a lot of credit goes to Nigeria, who it wasn't just the pressure that they put on the Opals bringing the ball up the floor, but it was also their ability to run stuff on the other end. Their ball and player movement was really, really good, and when they kept scoring, that meant the Opals had to keep getting the ball out of the basket, inbounding the ball. Nigeria could set up their full court press, and that pressure was on immediately. The Opals' inability to defend in this game was what led to them not being able to get into their offense. I thought every sort of mistake, every issue led into the next.
Yeah, I think they had a few breakdowns throughout the night, no question, but they still only give up 75 points. To me, they just couldn't get into anything. And Sandy Brondello yesterday spoke about the fact that, yes, they were aware of the athleticism and they thought defensively it was going to be a challenge for this team. But Brondello also said, well, we've got great size and Ezzy's a rising star. Of course, Lauren Jackson is out there in a dominant physical force. If you can get the ball down low, we've seen Kayla George, who played very minimal minutes, but we've seen Kayla George tear apart games and sometimes a little bit more from the outside. But I asked LJ about that. I said, you talk about the size of this game where maybe you could get an edge over Nigeria. Was the pace of the game, was the fact that it felt so out of control at all times the number one contributor to why you weren't able to get any presence in the paint? And she just said, well, we didn't do much at all inside tonight. The turnovers killed us. It was really difficult to get the ball inside. And then when we did, we didn't do anything with it anyway. We have a lot of work to do as a team to figure it out and how we turn this around. And she mentioned, obviously, the tough teams they've got coming up. She just said, we've dug ourselves a hole and it's going to be hard to get out here. And the preparation does matter. I mean, we spoke about this with the Boomers and certainly guys that have played together, whether it was Landale and Giddy, those guys, the connection, you could see it on the floor. So, yes, there was times where you thought, okay, the Opals can just settle it down. And here's the thing. It wasn't one player in particular. They had 11 players see the floor tonight and 10 of them had turnovers. So it's not that it was one player that was really struggling. It just, to me, looked like they were taking it in turns. Okay, now you can try force your way through this pressure. Okay, now you can try and force your way through this pressure. Like, I can't remember seeing a professional game where players got their pocket picked with such regularity. I've just never seen that.
Not at like a professional level, right? Not at this level. I've covered junior basketball. I've seen under 12 games where this stuff happens, right? And those are blowouts. I'll keep going back to it. The lack of preparation or the lack of ideal preparation was just so evident in this game. And it was everything from this Nigeria team doing a really good job of fronting the post with Ezzy. And then whenever she did get the ball, one dribble toward the paint and the help was coming, right? And so this Nigeria team was pretty well drilled. And I don't think Australia had any counters to that. And then it was Sandy Brondello not really being confident with anybody, really, right? Jade Melbournes, I thought, was largely fine, but she did turn the ball over a few times in the backcourt. And then I think Sandy Brondello thought, this is my 21-year-old. This is her first Olympics. I've got to give Christy Wallace a go. I've got to get someone else to come in and bring the ball up and initiate. And I feel like that sort of uncertainty bled down to everyone, and no one was really able to find any rhythm. I thought because they don't have their rotation set, because they haven't had ideal preparation, I don't think they were prepared for any sort of adversity. And when adversity hit at the level that it did with Nigeria, which was very athletic, very physical, I don't think they were prepared at all to overcome that.
Yeah, Melbourne started this game really well. And then, to your point, had back-to-back possessions where she turned the ball over, trying to get the ball up the floor, and then she was taken straight out of the game. And then the other young star in this team, Izzy Borlase, comes on the floor, and then first possession, she turned it over. And I think you're right. It did feel like there was some kind of desperation with the rotations trying to find something that worked. But as I pointed to, it was not just the young players. Steph Talbot really struggled in this game. Now, it's interesting because you look at the box score and Talbot finishes with 12 rebounds. She has 10 assists in this game. And you look at those numbers.
A bit of the Draymond Greens, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's highly impressive. You look at that. But then the 4 turnovers really hurt. And she was 1 for 10 from the floor. She couldn't hit a shot. And so in addition to the lack of preparation, we know that there is a number of players on this roster that have come in, carrying injuries. So one, you look at it and you say, okay, well, we've lost Beck Allen, who's probably a starter. And if she's not a starter, she's playing 20-plus minutes. She plays defense. She's a really great shooter. So yes, you lose a key player there. But then you have a number of other players that are carrying injuries as well. And I think that that's the concern here, because this isn't about disrespecting Nigeria, but if you looked at the group, this was the game that you had to win. You had to win this one and set yourself up for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, the great teams win the games that you're supposed to win, right? Then the exceptional teams are the ones that then overcome those great teams. But you have to win the winnable games, and that's what this was. Every Olympics, there's generally one of these sorts of teams in your group. Right, the Boomers have experienced this with Angola in the past, with Nigeria in the past. This was supposed to be that team, and the fact that not only did the Opals not get the win here in a really tough group, because Canada and France are coming and they're really, really good, But also a 13-point loss is an absolute killer in this instance. When we know about how you have to qualify for the quarterfinals, losing by 13 points is absolutely brutal. Steph Talbot, you mentioned that the double-double, the weird rebound assist double-double, but
Yeah.
she was inserted straight into the starting lineup. She barely played in the exhibition games. And so again, it was just a matter of where was the rhythm coming into this stuff? And it's not as though you have this seasoned point guard who's running the show. You have this new young Jade Melbourne who is going to be a superstar for Australia at some point. She's already on track to be that. But in my mind, I felt like Sandy Brodella had to lean into her. Don't pull her when she makes mistakes. You've brought her. She's come to be your basically your primary point guard, your main initiator. Lean into her. I get Christy Wallace is older, right? And she plays on a bigger stage currently, and she's been there. But I feel like you had to keep leaning to Jade Melbourne. And then there is a question of, are there enough ball handlers on this team? Are there enough ball carriers? If this is what Nigeria is going to do to you, I don't know if any other team's going to match the physicality of them. But what are some of those other better teams going to do to you? You know, you look at who didn't make this roster, and you look at a Steph Reed, or I don't know if a Shyla Hill could have played this, or Georgia Amor. I don't know. Like, do you need more ball carriers on this team?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You look at the two eras again. So if I was looking for positives from this game, yes, there's a few turnovers. Melbourne had 4 turnovers, but I thought she still had nice moments in this game. You know that she's going to be the future of this team. She has been playing the backup point guard role in Washington, so she is probably the closest thing to a point guard that this roster has at that age, making her Olympic debut. That is a lot of pressure, particularly when the wheels started to fall off for this team. And the other positive, I guess, would be Alana Smith. I thought she looked the most likely. She had a couple of those big threes as the Opals were trying to make a charge. And they did get within 4 points in the fourth quarter, and there was signs of physicality from LJ on a couple of possessions. And it's like, okay, if you stop turning the ball over, you can establish yourself in the half court, and you might be able to work your way into the game. And then the turnovers return. So there was glimpses in this game, but I think your point is exactly right. If you're Canada and France and you're sitting back watching that game, and care whatever your blueprint was before, now you know what your blueprint is. Put pressure on the Opals, because today they showed no ability to work through it. And it looked at times like there was panic, and then all of a sudden you start to stress out. And I understand that in the Olympic opener, but they didn't really show anything to us that they were able to figure that out on the fly outside of maybe a 6-minute stretch in the third quarter.
And I agree with you that I largely did like Jade Melbourne's minutes. Again, it was just a stretch where she turned the ball over a couple times, and those they were very loud turnovers as well. And I feel like that's stuff that sticks in a coaching staff's brain of, oh no, like what if this happens again? We have to take her out and put someone more seasoned in. I imagine that's what the thinking was at the time. But Jade Melbourne, especially we saw it at the start of that first quarter, when the Opals were able to get stops and go and get downhill, that was Jade Melbourne coming off those on balls in semi-transition and really pushing the pace. I thought that was something that they did that was really effective. I think we have to give a ton of credit to Nigeria, not just for the way they're able to hound the ball, but I look at someone like Amy Okonkwo hitting tough shot after tough shot. Every shot that she made, there was that big 3 in the fourth quarter. Every shot that she made felt like it mattered. Any time that Musa hit a shot, she just had that crafty mid-range game. And then it was Kalu leading the way the entire time. It seemed like Kalu was the best guard on the floor. She was arguably the best player on the floor. She had a few threes to sort of get Nigeria back in the game in that first quarter, but it seemed like she was the one who was controlling the pace of the entire game. She was the one who was sort of running the offense for Nigeria. And again, I think their ball and play movement was really, really good, largely led by Kalu controlling that pace. And because they're able to score, because I don't think the Opals were able to really, the ball movement was really, really impressive from Nigeria. And the Opals didn't really have an answer for it. So over and over again, they were pulling the ball out the rim. The game was slowing down, and Nigeria had opportunities to set their stuff up. And I think that meant that the Opals really weren't able to get back in this game, and Nigeria was able to stretch it out to 13. That was really impressive from them.
One stat that I don't think I would have believed if you told me prior to this game was that the Opals would be outscored in the paint. 30-24 was the final score here. And that's not going to be a blueprint for this team to win. But if you're watching at home, like so many people that are watching to this podcast or listening to this podcast would feel, you were pulling your hair out with the Opals at the free throw line as well. And in a tournament like that, even if you are maybe just talking point differential, but to go 8 for 18 from the free throw line while Nigeria go 18 for 21, and some of those misses in the fourth quarter, they had, I believe, 5 or 6 free throw misses in the fourth quarter out of those 10. And that was in that stretch where they actually looked like they were going to pinch it. They looked like they were going to overrun this Nigeria team. They missed a bunch of free throws in the 2-minute span. And then once Nigeria hit a three, I'm not sure if you could see it on the TV, but it felt like everyone all of a sudden, then the shoulders dropped again. And you understand that because it was a tough day at the office, but it felt like a couple of those threes in the fourth quarter from Nigeria, a team that overall only shot 31% from three. Those were the backbreakers. So whether it's the turnovers or the free throw shooting, some pretty fundamental stuff that I reckon would be keeping Sandy Brondello and a bunch of the players up tonight.
That's probably the most annoying thing, that it was free throws, it was turnovers. I think ball handling and ball carrying and being able to get the ball over the floor, that's something that you generally can control. Free throw shooting is generally something you can control. The fact that it was those two things that really let the Opals down, that would be really, really disappointing. And this was a really poor performance from them. I think they'd be the first to admit that, right? The free throw misses were timely as well, in the worst way. I think Alana Smith hit a three in the fourth quarter that maybe cut it to either 2 or 4 points. So that was what you said. It looked like the Opals were maybe about to steal this one. And then she got to the line. I think she had an opportunity to tie it at the line. Missed both free throws. It remained a 2-point game, and I don't think Australia got close beyond that. I think Nigeria went and stretched the lead out. So those misses weren't just important in a vacuum, but in individuality, those misses just came at the worst times. It was the times where Australia really had an opportunity to bring that lead back, and they didn't take those opportunities. And Nigeria, they look like the team that wanted it more. It's the cliche. Again, that sounds boring and simple, but they look like they wanted it more, and they got it.
So I just poured back through my notes there, and in the fourth quarter, Smith hits the three, the one you're talking about, cuts it to 58-56. There's 6:04 to play in the game. Nigeria immediately rattle off a 5-0 run. There's a couple of missed free throws in there for the Opals. Australia called timeout, and that was when you just saw the shoulders were slumped walking into the huddle, and it felt like that was the game. They never really responded after that, outside of a few fleeting moments there. So overall, the Opals, it's disappointing. And it's not over. As we've pointed to on the men's bracket on this show, there are going to be a couple of third-place teams that are going to move through. So, it's possible you can win one game and find your way moving through to the knockout stages, albeit on a much more difficult path. But Canada coming up next. That's a team that Australia beat twice at the Women's World Cup back in 2022. And then France after that as well. So still in it. But as I pointed to it, if the Opals lost today, it's okay. I didn't expect it to happen that way. So clearly from the reaction on social and also just the reaction you saw of the girls walking off the floor, pretty disappointing all round. As people are listening to this and watching this, though, Olgs, they will once again pick themselves up and get ready for the Boomers in Canada tonight. And out of all the group stage games, talk about Team USA and Serbia, I think Australia and Canada's right up the top of the list when it comes to games that people are looking forward to.
I think so. And I get it. It's largely because of the NBA talent that exists across both teams. But all of the little subplots, I'm really excited to see. I'm excited to see whether Australia is going to change their starting lineup. Will they take either Patty Mills out? I don't think they will. Will they take Nick Kay out and go with a smaller lineup? Will Dante Exum be back in this game? What will Josh Giddey be like up against his now former Oklahoma City Thunder teammates? Right, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Lou Dort. Speaking of Lou Dort, which Australian is going to be put in the torture chamber? Right, all these little subplots, I'm really, really excited to see. I think because of the way that Australia has performed over this exhibition game schedule, and because Canada has looked pretty good, but not absolutely invincible, obviously, I think people see this as not necessarily an even matchup, but way more even than they might have thought a few weeks ago. So this is going to be a really fun one.
Yeah, the opener for Canada, at times looked like maybe they were in a little bit of trouble, and Giannis was getting downhill and he was just about fouling out the whole country of Canada. But when Brooks was on the bench and Lou Dort was on the bench, and I believe Dwight Powell fouled out as well. So, look, that is going to be a challenge the Boomers face later on. But certainly the offense, and I think potentially similar to what we saw against the Opals, the Boomers are going to have to work their way through some significant defensive pressure, probably full court pressure in this game to get into their offense, because we saw Australia against Spain with Daniels, with Green, with Daly. They were able to force Spain into late shot clock offense in terms of when they're initiating things. And no doubt they're going to try and do the same thing to Australia. And you pointed to Dante Exum, and this would be really, really handy if he could play this game. Now, you initially reported that he was going to miss some time, but there was optimism he would play potentially in the group stage. As we mentioned at the top of this, I just came from practice. We saw Dante at the back end, but he was a full participant. That's 2 days in a row of going through contact drills, dribbling and shooting and passing. And he's recovered quicker than they thought. They didn't expect that the second game was going to be an option. They were thinking more so the third game. But if he is available to play, as they now expect that he will be, this is going to be a really timely addition to this rotation.
Yeah, against this Canada team, with all of their bigger wing bodies, I think being able to throw your own wing bodies at them is really, really valuable. Did you get to see much of practice? Did you see Dante out there? Did it look like he was moving around just fine? Like, did you see anything?
Dribbling and shooting, no scrimmaging or anything like that. But I did ask the question as they went through that. I said, was he available for everything? And I was told there was nothing, that he didn't sit out for anything. So if that's the case and they're working through practice, then that's as positive sign as you would imagine. You wouldn't think that there's going to be a setback tomorrow morning, but as with all of these things, we'll see if there's any late wrinkles to the Exum story. But we'll see what that means for someone like Matthew Dellavedova. You suspect if Exum is available to play, we'll wait and see whether that means he's going to come straight in and play 15 minutes, or maybe he'll be limited there. Gorge definitely went through almost the entire roster outside of Duop Reith the other night. So I think the big man rotation is going to be fascinating against a smaller Canada team as well.
What do you think this Australian team does with, I think, especially their starting lineup? Because Gorge spoke to you, I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday. I've lost track of my days.
Me too.
But go to the ESPN Australia YouTube channel. You'll see Kane's interview with Brian Goorjian, and he mentioned the idea of liking going small and going up against this Canada team where they start SGA. Is it SGA Jamal Murray? No, it's not. It's SGA, Lou Dort, Dylan Brooks, and RJ Barrett, right? Yeah. So you've got four wings out there. Do you think that the Boomers go small? Maybe Nick Kay out, maybe Josh Green in, maybe Dante Exum in if he's healthy? Or do you think it's a case of the Boomers sticking with their guns and making Canada adjust?
It's interesting because pre-tournament, when we discussed this, I thought that this was the game where you start Josh Green and even a Dante Exum. And I said, look, if you were going to bring Paddy off the bench, this was the game that would make sense just because of the defensive options you're going to need. I don't think that's going to be the case. If I was going to make a change, though, I don't expect Dante Exum to start this game, but I would have Josh Green come in for Nick Kay as a possibility. But I don't actually expect that's going to happen. I think we'll certainly see stretches where they have the four more versatile defenders out on the floor. But I do think in a tournament that's so short and you're coming off short preparation and you haven't changed the starting lineup once, I think we'll continue to see Gorge tinker with the lineups throughout the game. And to be fair, he's been quick to pull the trigger on different lineups if they're not working and bring different guys in. So I think they'll stick with the five, but I do think we'll see some of those smaller lineups. I feel like you probably feel the same way.
I think so too. I think just the idea of changing a starting lineup, even if it isn't, it feels drastic. So I don't think they do that. I think that there is some value in continuity, and I imagine the Boomers want to continue to lean into that. I'm intrigued at this Canada team. There's something about them that makes them feel more beatable because Jamal Murray hasn't really found his groove yet, right? We know what Jamal Murray is, right? And on big stages, he's able to step up. But he is coming off a semi-decent, basically 2 straight years of deep playoff runs. And, he hasn't really found his rhythm yet. He comes off the bench. He wasn't great in that first game against Greece. I wonder if maybe he just hasn't found his step yet, and that's an opportunity for Australia, who I think are clicking on all cylinders right now and are playing with a really good physicality. I wonder if they can come in and swoop.
Yeah, and the connection between Murray and SGA, I assume, have not played a lot of basketball together over the years. I don't know the full background, but I'm going to assume that's the case. Canada for so long has not had a lot of those guys play. So, much like we talk about who can be the primary ball handler and can certain guys play together, I'm sure Canada's working through that as well. And if they haven't quite sorted that out and that benefits the Boomers, then I think we'll all be happy. But I think it's going to be a great game. I'm highly excited. I think the crowd's going to be ridiculous in there, and it's a decent time slot. Got to stay up a little bit later on a Tuesday night, but I know you've got no problems. But some of us have to get up at 9 a.m. I want to say some of us, not me.
Okay, Kane, I stay up as long as I need to. I will watch skateboarding until we have to podcast. I will do this for you. And my goodness, tomorrow's podcast, 9:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time.
2 a.m.
Probably a 2 a.m. podcast for us, but that means that everyone in Australia will wake up in the morning to a wonderful ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour from us too. So, man, I like that we're doing this after every Boomers and Opals games. There's always something to talk about.
The positive in tournament basketball, if you have a bad day, you wake up tomorrow, you dust yourself off, and you get ready to watch some more basketball with renewed hope for a brighter future.
Are you gonna say that to Sandy Brondello, or are you gonna be avoiding her at all costs? I don't think she wants to hear that from you, man.
I don't think that we've said anything that they wouldn't be thinking.
That is true. I am curious if they will treat tonight's game as just a bump in the road, or maybe sort of an example of some deeper issues that they need to sort out. I'm very curious. I don't know which direction they're going to go when it comes to their thinking.
Now, they did lose their opener in the 2022 World Cup, and that was a different schedule. The groups are a little bit bigger. They played a bunch of games, so it's not exactly the same, but I'm sure they're going to be leaning on that you can respond. And Canada was a part of that response in the group stage back in Sydney. So the Opals not done with yet. Lauren Jackson said it best. They've dug themselves a hole. I think that's certainly accurate, and it was really a shocking performance today in more ways than one against Nigeria. So the Opals go down. The Boomers getting ready for Canada. As Olgun said, we'll be back tomorrow, but make sure you keep it locked on all the ESPN socials, espn.com.au for all the Olympics coverage you need. Still plenty to come from Lil, Olgun Ulich, Kane Pittman. We'll speak to you all tomorrow.